Hey guys, so I've got 5 tips for you. This is mainly regarding what I've kind of got my first experience with Canyon Clash, really in a more in-depth way than I've done it before. I was looking at my old video and I thought, I better explain kind of what you do and how you should do it. Now, I will say I did when I initially went into this, I set up my marches as even as possible, picked the best random recommendations that I could get, and just kind of floated in. I think a lot of people do this, right? You basically get 300,000 troops, so you do 100k of each, and you just wing it pretty much. And there's nothing wrong with this, but I think one thing that you can control is the heroes that you use. And looking back on this, I think one thing that I will say that makes the most sense to me is you need to have one battalion of heroes that are strictly attack heroes. Heroes that are going to buff anything that is damage up, anything that is going to increase the amount of damage that you output. Then you need one battalion of heroes that really focuses more on the garrison side of things and will improve HP, things that are going to improve defense. Because what you'll find yourself doing a lot in this is you're going to be both attacking players and holding forts and also defending. And you notice how I can advance, and this is the big thing, is you can both attack a fort and then you can also advance. So even though you're attacking the fort, you can also jump and somersault into the next one. So you see how it says 3 and 5? That's the number of guards that are currently in that building. So if you're one battalion, you got to have, at least a certain amount of these, you've got to have. And so like you'll see here, I'll send 3 marches at 5 and win. Now, it's not to say that one march can't beat 2 or 3 or 4. It absolutely can. And so a lot of that has to be based on really in terms of what your stats are and how well your armies are going to be able to handle against individual players. Now, that my first tip would be is that third march that you have. So that first battalion's your attack battalion, your second battalion's your garrison battalion of heroes. That third battalion, I think you really just want to stick with really just anything that you've got on your hands. You want to have as even as possible. So basically pick your best possible heroes that you have left over and throw them in the mix. Now, I don't know, you could conceivably see if you could try and adjust your percentage balances. And if you're going to do that, I say do 50% of infantry in your first and second battalion, and your third battalion make it a mix like I was doing in this round. And somebody could try this and really test it and see if this works out. But if it works anything like in Championship, it very well could conceivably work better this way. But in the first and second battalion, have 50% infantry. For your attack battalion, do 30% marksman and 20% lancer. And then do the reverse for your garrison battalion. Do 30% lancer and 20% marksman. And the idea here is that if it works just like it does in Championship, that it'll actually make a pretty good attack battalion, a good defense battalion, and then a mixed battalion that'll kind of help supplement reinforcements. Now, in general, all right, the main strategy here, as you can tell, is you want to basically go after all of your gates, which are these arrows here with the lines. You want to basically take these over and hold them. I recommend what you do is as soon as you take over one of these, you want to both have some players that are set at the gate and then some players that are at the interconnecting behind that gate. Because as I told you earlier, they can also advance. So if they attack that gate, they very well could also hop and jump behind enemy lines, basically, and cause you a lot of headache. So if you want my 2 cents, you want to basically hold gates, and then you also want to be able to hold some units behind them. So, obviously point out, do a little bit of work on your behalf of your entire alliance if you can. Communication is key here, and obviously the activity and number of people that you have in Canyon Clash is key. I would say if there's anything that I would strive for more than anything else, beyond just communicating where you are, you also want to make sure you're appointing people in control of those key areas and those key points. Don't forget your bonuses. That was another big thing that, even when I was starting it, I didn't really want to spend the 2,000, but it really does make a difference. Obviously, make sure you have your bonuses on if you don't already have them on. I'm really beyond that. As far as my second tip goes, I would say about the only other thing I could leave off on is you want to have a good defense. But to get a good defense, you need a good offense. And so this goes into the third tip, which is that what I noticed that made Orange do so well was because that they had basically 3 whales. But all 3 whales had 3 attack battalions. All 3 whales had 3 garrison battalions. And the way that they handled this was they basically combined the three Wales attack battalions and they fought as a unison force. So when they attacked, they were fighting with the three best battalions that they had and then jumping over and just causing mayhem behind enemy lines, which slowed us down. And then everybody else in their alliance was centered on defense. So they basically used their whales as their offensive. Whale, are pretty much, as you might expect, are the players that are going to be super overpowered, have a lot of really good gear, have a lot of good stats, basically. But those guys were out doing all the damage. They were the ones going out and pursuing and doing the offensive front lines. And there's two ways you can go about it, right? You have the left flank, which is the far left, the right flank, which is your far right, and then the northern flank. Everybody jumps over into the northern flank, but you can surprise the living bejeebus out of somebody if you come in from the left flank, which is exactly what Orange did. They came in from our left flank, and we were trying to hold them in our left flank and our north flank at the same time. And just like in any battle, if you can get your enemy to focus on not one but two areas, it's going to be very hard for them to handle the right flank. And so this, unfortunately for Red, didn't really work out into their advantage, because obviously at this point, not only did Orange get the up on them, but then before we could do anything, we were already getting coupled by them. And that was just because of the power advantage that Orange already had at that point. Now, one critical thing that I will point out is that fuel is really, really important, but you can use march accelerators. So if you need to get your troops to somewhere quickly, you can. Obviously, yeah, it's going to either cost you a lot of gems or a lot of march speeds, but one of the two, you can use this to your advantage in key positions. One thing I will say is that everybody gets a flame guard keep or an ice guard keep. The keep itself doesn't unlock right away. Obviously, I noticed in this video, I didn't show you the initial start, but everything will start out shielded and then unshielded, and you'll have to kind of rush to get to the center. One thing that I will say for my fourth tip here is that when you look at your battle record and actually see what's going on. Because oftentimes you can compare and contrast and see what's working and what's not working very quickly. In my case, I was statistically behind and I was using even marches, and it really did make a difference for that guy to just have that teeny weeny bit more infantry. That was making a huge difference in terms of the battle. And because of this, he also had the advantage, and it took me twice as many battalions to fight his one battalion. And so for that reason, you oftentimes find yourself needing to group up with others. And I think that's really, strictly speaking, is what will make or break a fight in Canyon Clash. Is if you don't have the players in that location, you have to coordinate. Now, as you can tell, each of these forts here are going to control and give you points. And so you're also going to have to struggle with trying to get a hold of more and more of these positions in the battle. And so not only do you have the building effect at play here, but you've also got to really work against what your opponent's got as well. And so you can see here, like, even though I knocked out that one guy, the next guy behind me is going to get paired up, and then I get thrown to the bottom of the list. And so it's a constant in this, is that you're not going to be able to just mollywop, unless you're the only one in there, that is. But even then, I don't recommend being the guy mollywopping, because the thing is even though you're mollywopping, the one thing a lot of people blow off is that they'll get hit a bunch of times, and then as soon as they quit getting hit, they forget to conscript. You also want to make sure you're going through and occasionally conscripting. And if you know what I mean, basically when you actually get done with a fight, you want to click on conscript, and you want to make sure your squad is full. Okay, it's really critical here, because if you don't do this in Canyon Clash, you're going to lose your battalion, and the revive time takes longer, and the cost of fuel is more expensive. So if you want to make yourself more efficient in battle, you want to make sure you know when to retreat, when to advance. These are really key in keeping up a fight in the middle of Canyon Clash. I mean, beyond that, my fifth tip, and this is really kind of something I've learned from my experience with this so far, and this is really what I think is going to make or break anybody's game, is, okay, sure, you can have 3 battalions, put all 3 battalions in one place, but the guy that I found that was really doing a number on everybody is he paid attention to when the keep unlocked. And now you remember I told you there was a flame guard keep, there's an ice guard keep. These keeps are shielded a little longer into the game, and they have what I call a kind of a gateway to them, okay, that's locked. When that unlocks, you can press that keep and then knock the middle of your enemy's basic defense. So, I mean, obviously you can hit left flank and right flank, right? And that'll get you a little bit of a head start, but most of the time people will be able to prepare for that or be able to counteract that. What they did not see coming is when that shield pops, that blows them away because they can't cover that flank, that flank, that flank, and that flank. 4 flanks is too many flanks for someone to try and cover. And so inevitably somebody's going to have a weaker flank. And all you got to do as the guy in that alliance, you just got to find where their weakest flank is. And as soon as you find which keep and what gate it is, as soon as you can take that over and then advance into the next ones, you'll ultimately end up winning. And I feel like, in a way, if you can strategize that way and know in ahead what your opponent is up to, you can kind of plan ahead and get ahead of whoever you're up against. Now, I will say that one of the disadvantages of Canyon Clash is that you're not strictly fighting one alliance. You're fighting 2. So you've got 2 opponents you've got to focus on. And obviously, when you get paired up against 2 other alliances, sometimes, not always, you'll get paired up, like in our case, where we had one alliance that was really strong, one alliance that was really weak, and then we were kind of semi-good, okay? And sometimes you don't know where you're going to fall in that. And so, and in a lot of ways, you can definitely feel like Candy Clash can be almost kind of rigged in a way. It can be very easily rigged against you because all it takes is a good couple pay-to-win whales to really kind of throw it overboard, and the only thing you can really do in the case of Canyon Clash is really just focus on, obviously you got to get the Citadel, but you got to, if you can even manage taking over one of the continents, including your own, that is going to make a huge difference. Obviously, making sure you appoint is going to be key, but obviously after a certain point, you can only appoint so much, because it costs fuel, and the biggest problem with fuel in this game is, if you run out of fuel, then your opponent's going to get an advantage on you in the fact that if you don't have enough fuel for people to conscript, enough fuel for people to heal and revive, you're going to very quickly find yourself falling behind very quickly. And if you run out of fuel, then you're in a fuel shortage. Now, that's obviously, disadvantage is unbelievably difficult to get around, and so you find yourself kind of struggling at that point, and so for that reason, my 5th tip is really kind of watch the fuel gauge, don't overdo it. Like I said, avoid trying to revive if you can, retreat when you can, because if anything, you want to fight in groups. That, I think, is really key in order to win in Canyon Clash. Otherwise, as far as my tips are concerned, this is really about all I can give advice on from my experience with it. I hope it was helpful for you, and thank you guys for watching. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys next time.